Of 1967, Muhammad Ali, at his physical and professional peaks, refused induction into the United States Army and thus service in the Vietnam War. In his religious and political beliefs, he was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison, though he would remain free while appealing his conviction. Thrown out 4 years later. But in that time, he was stripped of his heavyweight title, barred from boxing, and faced with J. Edgar Hoover's Justice Department. Ali's defiance has been embraced by contemporary America, but it made him a pariah to the mainstream of his era. Fast forward half a century, and the NFL is currently struggling to placate its most white conservative fan base while protecting the rights of its mostly black players from a very similar rhetorical attack to the one that Ali faced, one that is all but deference to American institutions. Even as the current administration attacks athletes that speak out and dismantles what was an already fragile progress to reform law enforcement's approach to communities of color, one that all too often ends in the police violence protested by the NFL players and others in the first place. Earlier this week, Sports Illustrated presented the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award to NFL free agent Colin Kaepernick for gambling his sports stardom to draw attention to these issues. But as with Ali's legacy, I and others question whether his message has already lost on a business eager to get back to business as usual. Joining me now is Bill Royden, writer for ESPN's The Undefeated, and Jack Brewer, former NFL player and CEO of the Brewer Group. Let me start with you, Bill. As one that has been out there raising a lot of these issues, you know, Eric Garner now and all the way back to Ferguson, I was heartened to see, you know, what Kaepernick and others did, bring a new spotlight. But has that now been lost? We're now hearing that the owners are talking about giving millions of dollars to players to set up social justice. What will that do about the issues of police? What does that have to do with law enforcement and the issues of trying to straighten out the criminal justice system? Is this just a distraction and a payoff?
Well, it's hush money. And let me say this. I'm happy that Colin is being recognized.
Colin, I think
that's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing.
No, I think he's done
it's a good message to young people that, you know, just like Ali, that, you know, you will be recognized for standing. However, you're absolutely right. Remember, when he felt kneeling, he didn't kneel to get $100 million from the NFL.
It was to deal with the Gardner case, to deal with the Tamir Rice case. Money in athletes' foundations doesn't answer that. When Ali fought, Ali went to the Supreme Court and affirmed the right to have your religious views respected with war. We're dealing with law. We're not dealing with law here. We're dealing with donations here.
and also, as your next guest, Dr. Mavoe pointed, what they got is barely 1% of what the NFL is actually worth. But listen, okay, good. So you get some money, and, you know, everybody goes to the beach, but you're absolutely right. I think the thing of protest has been lost. In other words, it's kind of been muted. And the question is, okay, what's next? Where do we go? And see, the problem I think is that the NFL Players Association, which was complicit and invisible in this, and I think DeMaurice Smith should be really called to task. It was his responsibility, and the association, to put a philosophical backbone and spine behind this movement and give it some definition.
Did DeMaurice Smith reach out to the victims, the people that they were supposed to be kneeling for, deal with the people that were fighting these issues? I know I haven't spoke with them, but maybe it was others. Did they use this to go and deal with some ways of getting donations to try to quiet down what Colin and others did and not really deal with the issue, the fundamental issue?
They should not have. They did not aggressively pursue Kaepernick and those people who continue to kneel. There's still some players who are continuing to kneel, and that's not important.
And the issue's still alive. Jack, the problem, let me bring you into this. Jack, the problem is still there. It's not like we've resolved the issue. It's not like the Supreme Court did with Ali, saying, yes, they have a right to respect their religion. It's not that these courts have said, yes, we've got to deal with the police issues that they were kneeling for in the first place. This is not a sitcom here. This is real life.
Right.
Yes, it is. And Rev, you make some incredible points. You know, we've talked about this before. We need to find some focus here. I applaud the league for trying to make an effort, but at the same time, it's not really their responsibility to put real policy and put real focus on these conversations. But as for the players, I get asked the questions all the time. Where does sports and politics, where does that come together? And I happen to believe that we need to, as professional athletes, use our platform not just to advocate for things, but also find some solutions. We're educated men. I have 2 master's degrees, and there's a lot of guys in the National Football League who are very educated. We can actually go to Congress and talk about policy, right?
That's right.
We can get behind some of these and really put some definition behind what we're talking about, and that's where we have to get to. You're right, giving money to foundations, and I'm a huge philanthropist. I love to do charity work, but at the end of the day, it's about solutions, man, and we got to help find some.
And I think, Bill, here again is where I look at the Players Association. Where is this being directed? Fine, if they want to donate to foundations, are those foundations going to fight for criminal justice reform? Are those foundations going to be on the ground dealing with the issues? Or is this just hush money? And is it to just say, all right, Colin had his day, move on, and the victims in the future are left on the sidelines here, which to me would be the most egregious thing that could happen.
Yeah, Kaepernick did not kneel to get $100 million, okay? And this money that was given to the Players Association, I think when Malcolm's group took it, he said, okay, we're done. We're done protesting. And so kind of mission accomplished. And just one last thing.
But it wasn't their mission, and they couldn't. The
NFL's mission accomplished.
But that's exactly right. But what I'm saying, what about the mission of those that were in the forefront and involved in the movement that Kaepernick and others came and highlighted? They didn't start that movement. This movement has been going on for a long time. They highlighted that movement. How does then the NFL owners and the Players Association become the solvers of something they weren't even involved in?
It's almost a sort of complicity. The thing is, what this whole thing is with activism is important. You talked about the last night with Roy Moore.
Right.
Trust me, if the University of Alabama football players, which is the most important entity in that state,
yes,
predominantly black players, if those guys were suddenly to come out and tell the voters to register,
right,
and to go against Roy Moore,
yes,
trust me, that thing would turn on a dime.
And
we wouldn't
Jack,
have this
I hear you saying yes, because when you get in states like Alabama, they have more political influence than most. Right. I'm talking about the players. Jack?
And that's where and unfortunately, that's where we're the most quiet, and we need to speak up right now. There's a lot of issues that we're facing, as a people, and you're 100% right. You want to really make some change and effectuate change when you have somebody, a disgusting person like Roy Moore, who's allowed to run for Congress. And I'll say this: I mean, anybody who sat back and watched that Sean Hannity interview, a lot of people probably haven't that are watching this station. Go back and watch the Sean Hannity interview, and you'll hear how disgusting this man is. It should have sent the entire state of Alabama in an uproar, particularly the athletes. And I hope they're listening to this, because we do have real issues, and there's times that our voices can really be heard, and that's at the ballot box. We got to start voting, and we can continue to hoop and holler whenever things happen to black men in our country, but unless we're willing to get involved in the political system and start understanding the political system, we're just screaming out to unheard ears, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, Bill Rawdon and Jack Brewer, for being with me this morning. Jack Brewer for being with me this morning.